Are you doing anything with the video?
Yeah, we throw it on YouTube.
FYI.
But how long have you been doing your podcast?
Let's see. Over a year now. So almost,
nice.
Yeah, probably almost 2 years actually.
Right on.
Because I'm on episode 24 and I've been releasing about one a month.
Nice.
Yeah.
And your podcast is specifically about women in architecture, correct? Or minorities in architecture?
Right.
Around there?
It's
right.
the XXLA Architects podcast. And so it's exclusively featuring women in architecture or around architecture.
Wait, so would I ever qualify to be a guest? I mean, that's the kind of a dumb
Wear a
question.
wig, maybe.
No, I think, okay, if you were doing something that was specifically feminist, sure.
Mm-hmm. I'm not right now, so I guess that answers maybe in the future. But so how did that podcast start? Like, what drove you to start it?
Sure. So one of the big things was that I applied for a fellowship. So the Association for Women in Architecture and Design, which I'm part of the board now, their sister organization, the Association for Women in Architecture Foundation, they offer, it's two different 50C3 and 50C6 or something like that.
Right.
So they're two different organizations, and the foundation offers scholarships and then a professional development fellowship. And so I kind of pitched the project as the podcast, and it really allowed me to buy all the equipment.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's a good way to do it.
It's pretty smart.
We should have done that when we started instead of self-funding.
But I think the bigger impetus was that, I'd been running my own practice for a while, and I was starting to feel kind of isolated. I think when you're a sole proprietor, you tend to feel that way. And I just had, at the same time, the equity by design data had kind of been released. And looking at the numbers, it's really important because you realize that your experience is not isolated, that not having a lot of female bosses or examples of female mentors kind of is not just an experience that you're only having.
Wait, so the equity by design...
Oh, yeah, so it was part of a AIA San Francisco sort of survey that was collected nationally. So they started off, I don't know, maybe 2013. And I think the 2016, probably somewhere around there was a new report. And every year they kept getting bigger and better data to track these things. So it was looking at the reasons why women leave the profession. It was looking at the numbers or the percentages of women in school, which was 50-50, and women in leadership, which was like, 13% or something. Yeah. And so it was like, okay, where is that drop off happening and why is it happening? So there were a lot of reasons. I mean, our profession kind of sucks sometimes, like
across the board for anyone.
Yeah. So like there is a drop off for men too. But it was looking at a lot of different reasons of why people in general were leaving and then why women specifically were leaving. So,
and they found that it was, one, because the profession is difficult anyway, and also because what women don't feel is welcome, or? There
are a lot of different pinch points is what they called them. One of the interesting ones to me anyway was that in their survey, when they looked at people working in architecture who were primary caregivers, men were a lot less likely to be that primary caregiver.
Sure.
So I think that was a big one where if somebody has to decide who's going to kind of take care of the kids, it was more likely women. And then especially if you were in architecture and maybe you're partnered with somebody else in a more lucrative field, or even in architecture in a more lucrative position, then, it kind of financially you get selected out. there were just a lot of different factors, I think. And they asked people too reasons why they may have left or why things that they wanted to be better. And so some of it too was mentorship and not having examples of women or people with families in leadership roles in their companies.
Right. And it's hard to aspire to be in a position when no one else has done it within the company, I guess.
Yeah.
In a way,
yeah.
Right.
I mean, I could see that. I don't have kids, but I could easily see if I did and, my bosses didn't have kids, feeling like I was being overly scrutinized for something. Yeah.
Actually, you have a crazy story, Marina, where it's not really crazy. I shouldn't say that, but okay. One of the places that she was at, a lot of people worked long hours, and then she was told, like, pretty bluntly, and I'm not misquoting what this person said. The manager in charge of the project, the principal partner, or whatever title he was, that he was like, well, it's 6 p.m., 7 p.m. or whatever. You're not allowed to go home because you don't have kids. If you had kids, you could go home.
It was 6 o'clock on Friday. I'm like, okay, see you guys on Monday. It's like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going home. It's like, you don't have kids. Why are you going home now? I'm like, oh, well, first, you don't know if I have kids or not.
Could have kids.
And then I was like, what is this? If I was a guy and I didn't have kids, would he have said that to me?
Well, I think all around that company, wherever that was, had really bad HR practices, because really, I think they would be opening themselves up to a lawsuit by treating anyone unequally. So from what I've learned anyway, in speaking with some lawyers, is that you have to treat everyone fairly. So you have to honor if somebody has a caregiver role, and you have to honor if somebody wants to take a time off for a hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting when the Richard Meyer scandal, I guess we could call it, came out, which was a while ago now. It feels like it was recent. Immediately in the office that I was at, like the next day, we had a series of attorneys come in. It was a big office, so they had different sessions. Actually, they had lined up the attorney to come in to go over appropriate workplace etiquette and behavior before the Meyer incident, but it was like very, very well timed in a way.
Yeah, we had one like a week after too.
I think all the big offices
crazy.
had that.
That's awesome.
Like everyone was like, okay, let's make sure everybody's happy. Like, no terrible story is going to come out of our office, so let's take care of it now before it gets big. Yeah, it was kind of...
And it was really interesting. And, I think people of our generation, and especially if you are a minority ethnically, or you're a female, you're probably more in tune with a lot of these issues to begin with. But even as a minority, I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting to hear legally what they think the boundaries are, right? And you could tell in the group, because you do sessions of like 30 people or whatever for an hour and a half. And it's a mixed bag. So you have people who are 65 and Caucasian white male, let's say, right? And then you have, it's a big spectrum. And you could very easily see, like, for certain classifications of people, generally, they did not quite understand like where the boundaries were. And it was interesting because it made, I think, me and probably a lot of people realize that for a big chunk of people, they aren't aware of these issues as much. I mean, they know the issues are there, but they're not as sensitive to it. And it's not because they choose to be ignorant, or that they are assholes, or they are racist or sexist. It's just it never really occurred to them. Have you, and you're talking to people, have you come across like a similar understanding of like the situation, that some of the people who we vilify, they just don't even, it doesn't occur to them at all, some of these issues?
I think in this day and age, it would be very hard for someone to not think there were issues, or not be at least aware of some larger conversation. Perhaps I think people think it's a problem that they're not part of, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get you.
Not realizing, that maybe in the past they may have said something that was borderline racist or sexist or whatever, I think we probably all are to some extent. So it's like, kind of recognizing where we can be better.
And the organizations that you're part of, I forget the titles again. There's two that are so they host like conferences and things like this around this issue.
Well, not around the issue necessarily of sexism.
Okay, right.
But I mean more
empowering.
Yeah, more like empowering or being a resource for people. So our biggest event is the symposium, which happened in May. And that was looking at different career paths. And it definitely you didn't have to be a woman to attend. You don't have to be a woman to benefit from it whatsoever. I think it was just the panelists were all women, and we looked at, the first panel was like a traditional career path. So looking at leaders from small, medium, large firms. So it was Ann Fletcher from HOK, Monica Heffelfinger from X10, and Patty Reeve from EYRC.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
We actually had her husband on here. Yeah. He's so funny. They're both, I haven't met her, but I would assume she's a great person.
Yeah. She's really nice. She's very active she was I don't know what they call their position, but like a chair or a leader of the Women in Architecture group through AIA.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So.
Very cool. And I'm curious, over the last 1 or 2 years with the podcasting and everything else, have you seen any parallels between issues and struggles that women face in the workplace that would also apply to minorities? Sure.
I mean, I think that the thing that companies should realize is that diversity is beneficial for everybody. It shows, there have been studies that diverse companies perform better economically. I think our clients are all diverse. The world we live in is diverse. So having a diverse set of designers and architects and, all the people that are making these buildings happen, it prevents situations where you're walking up a glass staircase and feel weird wearing a skirt because no guy thought of that. You know what I mean?
When you're saying that, I'm like, where's she going with the glass staircase? I'm not quite.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I can always tell when I'm in some space designed by a guy, and only guys, because
mirrors on the floor,
or there's like a see-through staircase, and it just bugs me.
I would have not thought of that, but I also probably wouldn't be doing glass staircases anyway. They seem like
dangerous, right?
Dangerous, yeah. Unless maybe it was an Apple store, but even then, I don't think they're transparent, right? They're like kind of coated or whatever, because they don't want a lawsuit with someone slipping. And then you run your own office, right? Mm-hmm. And you've been doing that for a while, you said?
Yes. So. Let's see. I left my office officially in 2011. It was during the recession also, and I could kind of see the writing on the wall. But I also had my first project in 2010. So I think through that experience, I proved to myself that I could do a project, and kind of just went for it. I had some freelance work on the side with another office setup where it was a safety net. I could do drafting or whatever design for another person and have some income and know that, like, if I didn't have a project coming in on my own, I'd be okay.
Right.
And then I started teaching too. So even more so, I had all of these kind of safety nets.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to do it, because the transition from working at an office or whatever to doing your own practice is really tough. And it's an interesting question, I think, for a lot of people around our age, or I guess any age, like, what's the best way to make that transition? When do I exit? Because I think one concern that we've been aware of seeing friends and colleagues and just, other people start their own business is that sometimes they start it too soon. Mm-hmm. And that's problematic for many different reasons, but the one that I've seen is that they don't have the knowledge to be successful. Right. So I've seen offices where they go off on their own and they're, let's say, really successful in the first few years, but you can just kind of tell that the work, the design itself, let's say, and also how they run their office, like, everything's capped because they exited too quickly. They didn't learn enough, I guess, in a way, How long had you been practicing before you started your own office?
I mean, full time, it was like 2008. So it was really fast.
It was quick.
I don't think I would have done that had it not been such a bad economic time. Like, I didn't think I was going to find another job. And I was getting work this other way.
Yeah.
So it sort of happened naturally, I think. I always thought that after I got my license, I would go and try to find a job again because I thought I'd be better paid. And what's funny is I got my license and I was like, yeah, clients can pay me more now.
Right.
I mean, I can bill more myself.
If you work directly with the client.
Yeah, and I just got to this point where I was like, I'm never going to make as much money working for someone else, and I'm going to be at the mercy of not being able to choose my own clients or not being able to choose who I work with.
Yeah.
Not having more flexibility. I work less now, but I work a lot. And so I think it's funny when people think that I can do whatever I want, because I can't. Like, I have clients. I have to answer them. Like, things are under construction. I'm not going to take off for a month and just leave it to my coworker.
You probably have more responsibility at this point. I mean, if you're on your own.
Yeah, I think it would be different if I had a partner who I could balance it with.
So, you're on your own right now. You don't have like a business partner or whatever to...
No. And so back when, as an idealistic student, I thought always that I would be a partner at a company or have my own firm. I realized later that that's not the case for everyone. And I just thought that everyone wanted to do that for whatever reason. And so I thought I would have some cool new like business plan, like a fresh take on architecture,
right.
Going to do something really different. No.
It could happen. People should say hopeful. It could happen. So when you broke off on your own, though, was there? So what allowed you to stay on your own or convince yourself you can stay on your own was you had these safety nets, but also presumably you felt confident in yourself enough to pursue it, right?
Yeah, I think working for a very small office where I was really given the opportunity to do everything, except for really interface with the clients as much as I think I should have been. But I was given the opportunity to do almost everything else. I had to fight for going to construction sites.
How big was the office?
It was 4 people.
Okay.
There was, one boss, 1 office manager, and 2 people doing the work.
They have an office manager for a 4-person firm. That's pretty.
Someone to
organized.
answer the phone,
Like it's pretty structured of them. I feel like there's a lot of 8-person offices who don't have office managers or anything like that.
But so even if the office was that small, you still had to fight to go on the construction sites?
Yes. Oh yeah, I used to, because if I wasn't going to be allowed to, for whatever reason, I said I would go for free. I would not get paid for that hour.
Really?
Why? It seems like in a small office. I mean, I'm asking you as if you're the partner of that office. But that's the thing we all kind of typically understand with small offices. It's the advantage of getting exposed to more things.
Right.
But usually under the umbrella of that statement is going to construction sites, because that's definitely one of the difficult experiences to gain as a young professional. It's like going to construction sites, and after that is speaking with the client, which is the most difficult. But yeah, usually if you're in a small office, you expect to get exposure to that. That's kind of peculiar, I would say.
Yeah. My boss's reasoning at the time was, well, I can't bill the client for both of us.
Oh, right.
So I'm going to go and you're not. And I was like, well, I'm going. I don't care if you don't pay me for this hour. And so there were times where I was able to go because my boss wasn't able to go.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a tough one. And do you have any employees currently?
I sort of do. I have 2 paid part-time summer interns. So
okay, nice.
Oh, cool.
And I
paid interns. That's the
paid.
Nice.
Yes.
Hey, listen to that, people out there.
Oh, I know. It drives me insane that these big star architects, I don't know what, they can't afford it. They don't want to. Like, how can you turn around and ask someone to value your time when you don't value other human beings' time.
Yeah. Have you seen like on Instagram, what's the account that was started recently?
Archie Shame or something like that.
Yeah. It was called.
I think that's awesome, actually, that someone, is just willing to put that stuff out there, because it's crazy, right? That you're going to spend 5 years in school, you're going to learn all this stuff, you're going to graduate with loans, and the first job you're going to get is an internship, right? Or even you're in school and you're doing internship. Sometimes you move out of state, out of the country to get somewhere, and you get an full-time unpaid internship.
Yeah, it's pretty
Maybe
wild.
You get a stipend with some subway pass or whatever. It's like, oh, thanks, dude, for the subway pass at $100.
Yeah, it's so common in like New York City. They'd be like, oh, we can give you a stipend. We'll give you $100 a month plus a subway pass. Wow, thank you. Thank you. That's like enough for toilet paper. Idiot. So there's this Instagram account called Arca Shame. It was Arca Slavery, and then they changed it because they felt that was too aggressive.
Right.
Which is kind of understandable.
Or not appropriate.
Yeah. It's and I think it's good, but I also do feel sympathy for some of these firms, especially if they're not as established, if they're not architects, right? Because it's tough to make money, and I think it is understandable for partners to say, like, we're not making enough money to pay people, but I need help. That's why we have free interns. Yeah,
I don't know. There's something wrong with that, because if you're not making enough money, then you're not charging enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you haven't structured your business in a way where you figured out how to do these pro bono or very inexpensive jobs in your business.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I think you're probably hiring these interns assuming that they're not capable of doing billable work or something.
Right.
Because the way I look at it is that it's still very cheap labor.
Yeah, it is cheap. I mean, the amount interns are paid per hour is like a little bit more than what you'd make at McDonald's a lot of times, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, what is our minimum wage here? Like $15 an hour?
I think so.
Yeah. So if you can't even pay somebody that to potentially do something that could be billable, I mean, at the very least, someone can pick up red lines. I don't know.
If they can't, then just fire them or let them go and get a different intern.
Yeah.
No, I totally get what you're saying. And it's when we have these kinds of conversations, the one thing that we found is that all these different issues are interconnected, and they all loop back to larger problems that the profession as a whole faces, which is the big one is getting clients to pay you on time, and pay you decent money and enough to cover internships and things like this.
But it also has to deal with the like your personality, right? Like how you present yourself to clients, how do you deal with clients, how you do business.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is something that I think a lot of architects are terrible at.
Yeah.
Well, my feeling is a lot of architects, they like to focus on the work, kind of, and they don't really care about anything else, which is a terrible way to operate in a capitalist like society. It doesn't work that way. What was my other question about interns? Oh, but there is this idea that the unpaid internship is like the position is more of a apprenticeship, quote unquote, where you would work at an office for free because the idea is that intern, or the apprentice rather, is gaining so much by working underneath this master or this office that, you know, if anything, they should be paying the office to be there, kind of thing. And they're acquiring these skills, this very specialized knowledge by being there. And it's almost like, you know, an opportunity for them to even be in the office, is my understanding of this other position, right?
I mean, Frank Lloyd Wright did that, and he was not a great human being. So I guess it depends what your goal is or what you care about.
Right.
I care about being a good human being. Like, I'm not, you know, I'm going to mess up. I'm human, but I'm going to try to at least do what I think is right.
I used to have this idea. I'm trying to present the other side of the argument. I get shut down. I agree with most of what you're saying.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's
actually,
a discussion.
Yeah. One time we had guests on, I was presenting like an opposition, and they were presenting, their opinion, which was also internally my opinion, but they were like totally shutting it down. I'm like, okay, look, calm down a little bit. Like this, I'm trying to stimulate, but I know you get it because you do this else as well. But I used to have this idea that to be a good architect or designer, that you had to also be a good person. And this thinking had less to do with the workplace issues and internships and things like that, and more like, if you're going to design things for other people, then inherently my philosophy was that if you're going to be good at that, you've got to be a good person at some level. Otherwise, you're just going to go around fucking things up. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of some people get into architecture, is that sort of sense of empathy or wanting to make the world a better place physically, Right. I think, design has a lot of power to shape our lives, so that's important. I don't know that, with some of the people I've talked with, that just wasn't cool.
To be empathetic?
Yeah, like to want to make the world a better place, like to think this way and not critically about theory or whatnot, in maybe like 20 years ago.
I see.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that split tends to happen, especially amongst certain academic groups,
right,
who are deep architecture, they would, say, and they carry themselves in a certain way, and they belong to this kind of group. I could see that. But your own education, did you experience these kinds of divisions back then in undergrad? Or where'd you go for school? Where did you go for school?
So I got my bachelor's in, I got a dual concentration from Brown. They don't call them majors, they call them concentrations.
From Brown, interesting.
So it's not a, accredited architecture school by any means. So I got it in visual arts and architectural studies.
Okay.
And then I went to Cal Poly Pomona for my master's degree.
It was like a 4+2 thing.
It was at the time I think it was 3.5, which I think they've reduced it to maybe 3.
The grad program was 3.5?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But and then Pomona was good to you?
Yes. What do you mean?
What was Pomona like?
Okay, so my first impression, I drove in the back way, so I'm like, there are sheep, and I don't know what those animals are. Like, I'm a city person.
Wait, where's Brown located?
Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Is Providence? I'm not sure what Providence is like. It's a urban kind of setting? Or?
Yeah, it's a small city. It's maybe 40 minutes outside of Boston. It's small. It's on the water, and there's a river. And
gotcha.
At the time, it was towards the end of a renaissance, I would say.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And had you been to the West Coast before?
Yes. Okay. So I'm from Hawaii.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Right. Oh, yeah. So you're like from the super west. So you went from Hawaii to the East Coast. Okay. So
how was the first winter?
That must have been a brutal transition. That's a big change.
It was brutal. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie.
But prior to that, you grew up in Hawaii. You were there for high school and everything else, and then you went to Brown, right? And was there any reservation in going to Brown and thinking like this is going to be too much of a change? You know what I mean?
It was a tough decision for me. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. And looking back, I'm embarrassed by it, but I was so young. Like I cried a lot over that decision. And in hindsight, it's like, what? You were stupid. Of course you were gonna go to Brown, you idiot. Like
Right.
Yeah.
So you flew all the way to the East Coast, you're there, and then you flew back to almost all the way back to Hawaii, not really, but halfway. Hawaii's really far, I always forget.
It is far.
It's like 6 hours from here.
Yeah.
To California, and then you found sheep at Pomona. And then what happened?
Well, I really loved it, and this is something that I tell people often is that actually architecture school at Cal Poly Pomona was way harder than an undergraduate degree at Brown.
Really?
Yeah. And for part of Brown, I was pre-med.
Really?
Yeah.
And wait, but I thought your two were one with visual arts.
So yeah, but Brown is this wonderful place where you can kind of study whatever you want. Mm-hmm. You could make up your own classes, which we sometimes did. You could. There were no core requirements. They assumed that once you've gotten there, you're smart enough. So it was the perfect place for me because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time exploring different degrees.
Yeah, for sure. And what led you to decide architecture?
So at the time I was pre-med and I was probably going to be an art major, just because that I looked at the classes I had and I was like, oh, I only need 4 more to be an actual art major. I might as well just do that and I'll still be pre-med. And so as part of the fulfillment for that requirement, I took an architecture history class and I was just blown away because I had not even known what architecture could be.
And the history class, was it contemporary stuff?
It was. Okay. It was. I think I started off with a contemporary class and then I went back and did some other, older. Yeah.
Gotcha. Nice. And Pomona that's the first time where you experienced the typical architecture studio, right?
Yeah. I think so.
And was it kind of an eye opener?
Oh, I was so in love. Really? I mean, yeah. I love school. I'm one of those nerdy people who is always oh yes, more school, please. So being surrounded by all these people who were studying the same thing that I was and really passionate about it, that was amazing to me.
And especially I found at the graduate level, it's a different beast. You tend to be surrounded by people who, as you would assume, are even more dedicated. And it's it's such if you like school, if you don't like school, then it sucks. But if you like school, it's such a luxury, it feels like at times, because you feel so fortunate to be in this community where you're all kind of on the same page. At least for me, going through high school, I didn't enjoy it a lot because everyone, a lot of people didn't give a shit about high school. And when you get to undergrad, it's a little bit nicer because there's a little more dedication, but it's still undergrad and there's still 18 and they're, But graduate level is really fascinating because for the most part, you're not going to get anyone who's going to dick around too much. You're going to get people who are pretty focused. And it did feel like a luxury at times to be part of that. However, the brief exposure I had to PhD level people, they're very serious and they're frightening to me. You guys, this is another level of intensity about education. But anyway, so Pomona was, and then you're teaching at Pomona currently.
I am not anymore.
Oh, you're not? What happened? We don't have to talk about it. But,
nothing happened. Okay. Nothing bad happened. Okay.
I don't know.
Oh, I got fired. No, I decided not to come back last year.
How come?
It was really hard to have a practice during a boom time and teach a studio 3 times a week for...
Oh, that's right. They're 3 times a week.
It's 3 times a week. It's supposed to be 3 hours, but how do you fit 15 to 20 students in 3 hours for a studio course?
Wait, so the studio classes are around 15 to 20?
Yeah, I would say
that's
so.
Pretty big.
It's
right?
big, yeah. And it's, scheduled for 3 hours.
That's not enough.
And then you at least hit traffic one way. So,
yeah.
I mean, it was brutal. And I'm consciously trying to not work as much.
Teaching or work in general?
In general. Because I think with teaching and working, I was, coming home from teaching. Let's say I got home at 7:30 on a good day, but maybe 8:30, right? And then I ate dinner, and then I did some work. and then, you know, maybe went to bed at 1, maybe. And then I would wake up at like, let's say 7 or 8 and go to a meeting. And then, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's a lot.
That's intense. I feel like those kinds of hours should be only happening in school.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when you say you try to consciously work less, then how do you do that? You try and be more selective.
Yeah, cut out.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
But then you try to be more selective in the types of project that you take on. So
yeah. So it sort of backfired this year, I think, because I would often be working on a project, and a few months in, the clients would say, "We're pregnant." So we have this timeline now, and I'm like, really? I mean, good for you, but oh no, this is gonna immediately. I know what that is going to bring to my end of the project. Yeah. Or somebody bought a house and now they're paying 2 mortgages, which depending on who you're working with, no matter who you're working with, that's going to be stressful. And so they're on a certain timeline because every month matters. And so I was by fluke, I guess, I accepted a lot of projects this year where I was like, oh great, nobody's in a rush. But that also means nobody's in a rush, so they don't get back to you quick enough. So it's sort of an interesting, I'm still learning as I'm going what the right balance is.
Right. So were you teaching part-time from pretty much, if I recall what you said, from when you started your office, right?
Yeah, I think I started in 2012. And it's funny. So when I graduated, I remember telling the chair of the department at the time and one of my other professors, someday I think I'd like to teach. And kind of, a few years later, it was 2012, somebody couldn't teach a class like 2 weeks before it was going to start. Yeah. And I got that call like, hey.
We remember what you said.
Right. And so, I mean, that's one of the experiences I've had of you never know, just put out there what it is that you want, and you never know.
Yeah, 100%. That happened to me kind of also. That's how I got started teaching, is I had this interest, and for whatever reason, I always assumed that, and it's kind of true, that you need to have a master's to teach, which I think a lot of schools do use as a way to kind of weed out people. And I had just finished my master's, and I was talking to professors that I had. I was like, I'm interested in teaching, but I don't know if I'm qualified because you need a master's. That's how dumb I am. And then the teacher was like, well, you have a master's now, so you can teach. I said, oh, right. Okay, so I'll just apply and see what happens, thinking like there's no way they're going to accept me. I don't know why I had that mentality, but I did. And it seems like most people who start teaching, it's because someone like backs out like 2, 3, 4 weeks, or even like 5 days before classes start. And then the hiring process, I feel like a lot of times is really relaxed. It's like, yeah, okay, you're free. Come on and teach the studio. It's like, okay. Did you want to like interview me twice? Is there any more kind of a process? But I don't know. I feel like you just kind of get put in wherever there's an opening. But when you started teaching studio, were you hooked immediately?
I really liked it. Yeah. And so I actually thought I was going to miss it a lot more. But I think because I've had student interns coming in, and they were my former students, and there is a lot of teaching or mentoring involved in that, I haven't been missing it as much. And then I go out for reviews. Yeah. So
that's a way to get a taste of it.
Yeah.
And you were teaching mostly undergrad studios? What years?
First year. Almost exclusively I taught first year.
That's a tough group to deal with.
Yeah. I think you either like it or you maybe don't. I loved it. I thought that this is the students are so young and inexperienced and excited, so they almost don't know any better in a way. Like
they're like fresh and happy still.
Yeah. But you can talk about really abstract things and see them learn it You can see real shifts in people. And then sometimes, sometimes someone just won't get it. And you can look at that as an instructor and understand that if they're hardworking enough, it's just not their time right now.
Right.
It's going to take them a little bit longer.
Yeah. I taught first year recently, and it's when the semester started, the first thing I remember thinking is that I've forgotten how different it is between first and, let's say, fourth year. It's like a stark contrast between 17 and 18-year-olds and ones who are maybe 22 or able to drink is the big deadline, threshold. And it was so much fun because of the reasons that you're saying. It's like they're hopeful, and also they're more open, I feel like, than a lot of more senior students. I feel like by the time they get to fourth and fifth year, a lot of times they're very much set in their ways, and the struggle becomes less to just teach. It becomes like, how do I convince this person that there's more to their world that they need to learn, kind of thing. So since you've stopped teaching, you've enjoyed the freedom, and it's worked out. It's nice to have the extra time. I imagine the extra 3 days almost to do your own thing.
I mean, I don't have to work like all the weekends. And I mean, I wouldn't say I was working all the weekends, but I was working weekends, Right.
And I'm curious, as a person who has your own office, you've been doing it for some time. Has the biggest struggle been getting clients? Because that's what you always hear from sole practitioners. Getting work is the toughest thing. No. Okay, what's your secret?
I think in LA, I work a lot with single family residential projects. So, and a lot of addition and remodeling projects. I think that I've really been able to deliver well for my clients, and so they're always willing to give me a good review or talk with a potential client, show them their house. Like, I don't know, that part hasn't been hard. I think there's always people looking for architects in that sector. I think the harder part is getting the project that's different from what you already are doing.
Oh, I see.
Because I find it's really easy to convince somebody, especially a lay person, of your ability when you can point to something that's already been done and they want that.
Right.
It's a lot harder when you're trying to convince somebody to do something different and you can't point to an example of it. They can't visualize that they want that.
Right. And you mean different in terms of project type or like design style or aesthetic? Yeah,
design style or aesthetic. But I think also, the other part about that too is like the different project types. So I've worked on 2 commercial TI projects. Those clients are a lot harder for me to come by because I'm not well connected with all of the contractors or landlords or whoever it is that would be putting me in contact with the brands, let's say.
Right.
But I am really well connected in terms of contractors and consultants and venues where homeowners are looking for architects.
And do you use, I was going to ask house, but I guess house is mostly for residential stuff, right?
No, I'm on house, okay. One of my bathrooms was like the 13 most popular photo of the year.
Oh, wow.
Last year, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? Is it just like selected? There's like some kind of poll that happens?
I'm sure there's some sort of like the algorithm once people start liking or pinning or whatever, idea booking, I guess it's called in-house. Once they start doing that, the algorithm probably pushes it more, and then it gets featured in an article that they put out, and then people look at it more. So it's sort of a snowball effect.
Right.
And did you see any difference since this happened on House with people reaching out, or?
I think just the last few years with the economy being really great, I haven't had any issues. I've been getting a lot of inquiries, at least from House.
Really, from House? That's really cool. And it seems like they you do get projects from it, like they pay off.
Yeah.
That's cool, because I know a lot of people, I don't know a lot, but people try to use House, but it's like it's a new platform to a lot of architects in a way, and they don't quite know how to navigate it, I guess you could say, or like what's the thing you're supposed to do to become successful in House. And it seems, from what I can tell, it's just a matter of keeping things up to date with most, you know, just like updating things and showing that you're around and present. Yeah,
totally. I think gosh, I don't know how many years I've been on there now, but establishing a presence is really important. Getting a lot of reviews and then getting reviews updated. And
getting reviews updated, like having.
I mean, just asking new
for
people.
More.
Yeah, for
Gotcha,
more.
Gotcha.
So that you have, I don't know, at least one new review a year, because I think otherwise it probably looks suspicious. and, and then like just getting great photos and putting those up there.
Gotcha. And so you have your work professionally photographed when it's completed? See, I feel like a lot of architects don't do that.
It's expensive, but you know, it's totally worth it.
Are you able to convince the client that they should pay for it?
No.
I don't know. Well, you never know.
Yeah, can you pay for my portfolio?
You really need a good photograph of your living room so you can put it up in your living room. Trust me, you need this photograph.
That would be weird.
It could work. It could work. But that's really awesome that it seems to be working out. So what you're trying to hopefully not transition, but also get different projects, like more TI work. What other kinds of things would you be interested in doing?
I think what actually I'm most interested in doing is more small multifamily projects.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm really concerned about this housing crisis that we have. And I think that they're exciting to work on. I really, you know, it's funny, going into architecture, I thought it was all about the design of the building that would fulfill me, but it's really not. It's all about the people.
After talking to you for just this bit, it doesn't surprise me that would be the thing that motivates you.
Really?
Yeah, you have the aura of like a very nice teacher. Someone who cares about people a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know what? It's good to figure out what motivates you, because that's where you're going to feel the most rewarded in the end. So, yeah.
The housing thing in Los Angeles is it's kind of a crisis in a way, and it's a big topic, and we've spoken to a number of people about it. And it seems like the smaller scale multifamily type of building, so let's say 4 residences, is kind of the sweet spot where the magic is going to happen. And I think it would be, that'd be a really interesting thing to work with.
Yeah. I have a 4-unit ground up under construction now, and that was really a fulfilling process. I think also because my client was a family that owns property, and so like their son and granddaughter is going to live in one of the units, and it's not like a big bad developer sort of scenario. And that's like very much stereotyping developers, which I don't, you know, not all developers are thinking that way. And I think there's, well, you know, we took the developer sort of seminar series together. I think that developers, rightly so, have concerns about the economic payoff of and wanting some security. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Like,
they're taking a lot of risks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you know, big money. If nobody's interested, it's a gamble. So that's true that I feel like we always picture them and like present them as like the bad guys, but in the same time, they're the one taking the financial risk of doing the project. So.
Well, that's where I think the business model that combines both design and development and investment is becoming more common. And I feel like at the broadest reading of the design or architecture community, I feel like that trend is going to continue and become more common, because it gives the architect or the designer, let's say, more control, obviously, but it allows them to fully understand like where to put money into different things. And we've had a few friends that work at offices like that, and they really like it, because there's, I mean, as you know, a lot of time is wasted just by communicating with the client or with the developer and then so on, and it's back and forth. And by kind of shoving more of that stuff in-house, they're able to very quickly make decisions. So instead of it being like a phone call and email, then waiting for 2 weeks or whatever, it's just the guy behind you that you can talk to find out what's possible. So I don't know. I think it should be interesting for the community for us to get to that point, but that's a whole different ball game, and I feel like that's tough to do. Have there been any other leads for multifamily projects yet?
No, not really. I think that hopefully once it's done, I can photograph it and kind of put it out there a lot more. Yeah, I think it's just knowing the right people in terms of doing that.
But that kind of work, there are projects like that in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things that I am doing, if you are a small business and you're not part of the LA business, I don't know what that all stands for. Virtual network, something, the A, I don't remember. You have to, you have to register yourself with LA City's sort of network, and once you do that, you can get certifications too. So like I'm a woman-owned, minority-owned small business, and once you do those types of things, you get notified of projects. And so one thing I am probably going to go after is answering an RFP for expert architects with accessibility in multifamily projects, to try to retrofit some of the existing public housing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that is another sort of weird backdoor into getting more multifamily experience to show that I can do this.
Yeah.
And, I think those types of opportunities of taking on the types of work that nobody else really wants to do, that's like low-hanging fruit, right? You can easily go after something like that.
That's interesting.
Well, it's like the architects who care about the design and they don't care about the people, they won't be interested in those types of projects. But architects who care about changing the picture of the world, that's definitely work that should be done.
That's a good point, though, that on paper, I think most architects would be like, that doesn't sound very interesting to me. But perhaps it is worthwhile to do. I mean, it is worthwhile to do, but also could be used as a way to, as like a stepping stone, perhaps. That's I feel like when you're a business owner, you are forced to think more creatively about different things that if you worked at an office, like you wouldn't probably bother thinking about things like this.
Yeah.
The other thing I saw on Instagram is that I think you had, if I remember correctly, there's a construction site, probably the one you're talking about, I don't know, and you had your sign up there.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, right on, because every time I drive by a construction site, I never see the architect sign. I'm like, where the fuck is the architect sign? Because to me, I've always felt like that's like a perfect opportunity to potentially market yourself if someone walks by or happens to see it and they like the design. But, I mean, from what I've seen, it's rare, right? You don't see it.
Right.
I don't get it.
So I think I should have done it a long time ago. And what's funny is that my old boss I had asked him about it. I was like, why aren't you putting your sign up? And he was like, oh, I used to, and I only got like job inquiries, like people looking for jobs. It's not worth it. And so I had kind of internalized that for a while, and I was like, well, if I want to get more work in this neighborhood, and clearly I have a project that's going well, that particular project, there's a very active community, and showing that you're able to go through that permitting process and negotiate with different people, I want to show that off. So I put my sign up, and you know what? A week later, I got a call from a neighbor two blocks down.
There we go.
Yeah.
It has baffled me ever since I've entered the profession that you never see the sign. And I'm like, you see the owner, you see the construction manager,
the real estate, like everyone else, but the architect is never showing.
We're not good at marketing.
No, we're not.
So what other things do you do on that issue of marketing? What other things do you do to try and get clients and put yourself out there?
I think I could do a better job of this. Actually, it's what I've been thinking about a lot, improving my website to be much more user-friendly. So I think nowadays people when they contact you, unless they're contacting like 5 or 10 firms, they kind of know who you are to some extent and know they have an inkling that they might want to work with you, and it's going to come down to like price and what they think of you when they meet you.
Gotcha.
So I think I can do an even better job of like putting an FAQ question, section on the website so that they, when they contact me, even more so know what they're getting into. So yeah, I think I can do a better job of that, and that's something I've been thinking about a lot. In terms of other things, I guess, the other thing I'm doing is I'm partnering with GPA Consulting, which is a historic preservation, and they do some environmental services and stuff, consulting work. And I partner with them to inspect historic properties in LA City.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so it's really fun. These properties are either applying for tax credits or have already been accepted into that program, and now we're just going in and seeing if they're holding up their end of the bargain in terms of rehabilitating the property. So that is another sort of backdoor way, I think, of getting more experience with historic preservation. And I come in as the architect and they come in as the historians, and we do these inspections and write reports, and I meet a lot of people. I see a lot of awesome buildings throughout the city. It's really kind of fun. So that's, and at the same time, I'm building up expertise in preservation work, which is kind of great. It's not creative, but it's like, building up expertise.
Yeah, sure. And is that something that you like volunteer for?
No, I get paid.
Oh.
Yeah. No, it's work. So I partner with them. Okay. They're the prime consultant or contractor, and I'm the sub, and we have contracts with City of LA.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Really
you must get to like visit a whole bunch of crazy buildings. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Are any of them like unsafe? You're like, should we be here?
And not, well, I mean, I guess it depends what you mean by unsafe. I've never felt like physically threatened.
I don't know what I meant. I just threw it.
There've been a couple of alleys to look at the backside of buildings where you're like, oh, this is a homeless encampment, or like you look at something and we went into a house once that had a fire, and so it was there were parts of it, but I didn't feel like it was unsafe at that point. It was stabilized and everything. Right. So yeah.
The other big thing I feel like for architects is that the struggle to get within a certain community is tough. Like you were talking about, you have the sign that's outside the construction site, and that's in kind of a kind of community, and that tells them who you are. But I think a lot of people find it's tough to even get into that community to begin with. Have you come across any of those that kind of challenge?
Yeah, I think that some cities are harder to work in than others. And so a lot of times people are looking for, have you worked there before? Because they really want to know that you have that experience or those sets of relationships with the people who are going to approve your project.
I see. The HOAs?
HOAs or design review boards or, commissions, or even just troubled building and safety places, planning departments. Yeah. But, I think that if you have the skill set to kind of navigate that, I don't know, as long as you can convince the client that you are able to do that, then sometimes they'll take a chance on you.
Yeah. I kind of wonder with this question if it's a generational thing. I feel like that younger generations are going to be are going to adhere less to the kind of client that you're describing, the ones who want to go with someone who has been kind of ingratiated into that community, which I certainly understand for reasons of expediting things and maybe wanting the similar vernacular, I don't know, whatever. But I also feel like that's a much more conservative and older viewpoint. Like if I imagine working with a client who is a millennial, I have, for whatever reason, in my imagination, it's easier for me to see them saying like, yeah, you're not part of this community, but I don't care. Like I kind of like you, like your design, so we can figure it out. You know what I mean? Have you seen any of that kind of the gap or the differences between age groups?
No, I don't think I have enough experience as a whole with a big enough group of people to kind of, divide it that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I have these theories. I don't know if they're worth anything. But the thing you said about the website I thought was also really interesting, and it's something that kind of like the strategic approach to the website, I think when you look at it the way you are, it's different from what a lot of designers, how they look at it, which is usually just aesthetics. But more specifically, thinking about the website as almost a way to filter is, I think, kind of interesting too. So it's not just about attracting clients, but it's also to attract very specific ones who are going to vibe with you.
Yeah, I don't like wasting my time. And so I do a lot of that in going to meetings with people or talking on the phone with someone. Any conversation with a potential client is like at least half an hour long because, they have questions. You're trying to tell them your process. If you can cut that part out, and that's what I'm thinking about with the website, I could cut that part out where they've already read a little bit about my process. And the other thing I thought about too is that when I'm shopping around for professionals or businesses and I'm feeling insecure about what is it that I'm going to go through with this business or this process, that is actually very comforting to read, like, this is what you would expect to go through. Right. Like, let's say with LASIK, I got LASIK. And so reading that whole process of FAQs about what to expect, for just your consult, what to expect for the procedure, what to expect for the recovery, that's actually very comforting. And so just shopping around, like, that made a difference for me in terms of whether I was going to contact this one company or another one. And it's funny, it's like that could be the process at the other place.
Yeah.
Very easily it probably is.
Yeah.
But it's reassuring, right? Like you said, there is no mystery. Like, you're being very transparent and you're trying to gain their trust from like the first visit on the website. So yeah, it makes complete sense.
I guess architects don't do it because we don't think of it, or I wonder if it's like a kind of a not cool thing like you were talking about, which I think is, which is an interesting way to think about the profession in terms of, we do things and don't do things because we think it's not cool. I think maybe actually that applies to a lot of stuff in the profession. I really do feel like it, that we are almost more concerned with the opinions of other designers and what they think of us.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than, the client who's going to pay us. You know what I mean?
That's why when you look at a lot of, like, even big-time architect website, the website is designed for other architects. It's not designed for a client to find information.
Yeah.
It's really just a beautiful portfolio, abstract. There's no text, there's nothing. Like, you don't know anything about the firm.
But those big-time offices don't have the same problem as, like, what we're talking about, because I don't think they have to really advertise, I feel like. You know what I mean?
That's true, but I don't know. Still, a little bit of explanation never hurts.
Did you always know that residential was going to be the thing that kind of you would kind of be pulled in that direction?
Not at all.
No, not at all. Some people, like, they go through undergrad or grad school and they know very specifically, like, almost from day one, like, I'm going to do residential. This is like going to be my passion. But no.
So during my undergrad and grad school summers, I interned at a large company in Hawaii, and I really liked it there. I think, let's see, one summer I worked on a resort project, another I worked on is a very loose term. Another time I did a lot of LEED documentation for their office renovation. I worked on schools, and I loved the school projects. So I just thought I was going to work on more public, more civic type projects, and never thought I'd be working in this small residential scale.
Right.
I think it's perfectly fitting for me, but I wouldn't have picked that out for myself as that young person.
Well, why do you think it's perfectly fitting?
Because I care about people. I mean,
here we go again. No,
I think my personality is very well suited for it. I kind of like working on my own. I couldn't have a small team or work by myself if it was a school. I don't know. There's a lot of things about it. I get a lot of feedback from clients and interfacing with them, which, is the best part about my job a lot of times, which is weird.
That's probably a good thing. Do you think, and this is a wonky question, but do you think part of this comes from the fact that you grew up in Hawaii? Well,
cliche.
I mean, okay, I have a little bit of right to ask something weird like this because my mom's side is actually from Hawaii.
Okay.
Well, I mean, obviously they're from China originally, but Hawaii for quite many years. But I feel like, and so she grew up there back when Hawaii, she's from Honolulu, when the islands were not as developed as they are now. And there's for sure like a very strong sense of like local community and family and stuff like this. And I don't know, I'm just spitballing, but it's I kind of always wondered if growing up in a very unique place. What island are you
from? Hawaii.
The big island?
From Oahu.
Oahu.
From Honolulu.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we had this conversation.
Yeah, I'm probably like, second cousins with you or something.
We definitely know people who know each other. That's I think, for sure the case.
We should find out.
Yeah.
Your parents
let's go look on Facebook now.
My relatives out there are kind of crazy, I think. But
even better.
Are your parents still in Hawaii? Or is
yes.
Okay,
yeah.
right.
Most of my family's there.
Okay. Yeah, then we definitely have some kind of overlap, I'm sure.
What part of Honolulu?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I should know, but I don't. But anyway, so I don't know. It's a very specific community, right? And a specific place I grew up in, and I feel like that would maybe have some kind of impact on a person and the kinds of interests they have, perhaps, later on.
I mean, yeah, I think it does, as it would for anyone like growing up in France or whatnot. So I don't know how much of that feeds into the.
It might be because you think that I don't know, people in Hawaii care a lot and appreciate simple things from where they're from, like the nature and the small scale of things.
Yeah,
maybe that's
my hypothesis.
Why you're assuming
that's my guess. I mean, obviously, it's not. This doesn't apply to everyone that came from Hawaii. But I'm just kind of curious if it felt to you that because of your upbringing at that place that it had some kind of it shapes you or your general interest in things.
Well, I mean, I think that I'm an optimist, so I don't know if that has any. It's like a nature or nurture. I don't know whether that's like my family or whether that's the place or the community or just who I was.
Who you were meant to be. Do you go back often?
Yeah, probably like twice a year.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Would you ever think of moving back there to work?
Oh, I totally thought I was gonna live there. Like every step of my college or grad school career, I guess, was like, oh yeah, and I can do this in Hawaii.
And
not here.
But why didn't you go to Hawaii and like try it out there?
Well, so my husband's actually also from Hawaii. We went to high school together. We did not know each other really when we were there. And he's in aerospace, and so
it's California.
Yeah, and I like it. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
I mean, California is not a bad place to be. I also feel like doing residential in Hawaii would be a lot of fun if you could do like upper tier or like more expensive work. We were joking, we went to Hawaii like a while ago, but we were joking, but we could just like live here and work here, and we would do one really nice house a year and then just vacation the rest of the time, or just hang out the rest of the time. I feel like it's a good plan.
Yeah, I feel like I would be the one working on the house and you would be vacationing the rest
just
of the
all
time.
The time.
So
I feel like it could work. I know that construction in Hawaii is like very expensive. I know that, but
have you guys worked together on projects? Like not the podcast, but projects.
We've done competitions together.
We've done competitions together. I mean, the one thing is that because we're both in architecture and we've known each other for some time, I feel like we've covered in discussion a lot of different things. We actually work together pretty well. I think for other couples, it's not so easy, which is, I suppose, understandable.
You gotta learn how to compromise. That's the key.
What are you talking about? We agree on everything. Come on.
You gotta let him think he has the power. But in fact,
no, I mean, I enjoy. I think it's interesting that you have your own practice. Because for me personally, I'd probably go nuts if I was by myself, just because I'm not have my own. What do you call it? Deficiencies, as we can put it, that I'm like hyper aware of, that I think if I was on my own I would drown in them. One of them being that I'm very unorganized or can be. But no, yeah, we've worked together a few times. It seems to work. No,
so Marina, are you very organized then?
Well, one of the two has to be, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I could actually work completely by myself. And I'm totally fine.
That's true. Yeah, that's kind of a threat.
I'm not really sure why you're joining the picture there. But
it's something I have to keep in mind.
You gotta be the pretty face.
I don't know. I don't know about that either. So it's like, I don't really need you, just so you know.
David's like, so never leave me.
Keep that in mind. Yeah, that's true. Actually, you could survive on your own. I couldn't. But if you are on your own,
but that's true for life in general.
All right. But you've got to be. So your husband's not an architect; he's an aerospace. So does he work at an office? I mean,
yeah, he works in an office.
Yeah, so you've got to be organized, design. You got to wear all the hats. Mm-hmm. Is that one of the toughest parts about having your own office?
It is, and I think. But for my personality type, it's one of the more fulfilling things about having my own practice. I don't think I would do well in an office where I was pigeonholed into like a certain specialty or role. Mm-hmm. I like having a lot of that sort of role. Like I like learning about business. I like doing the design stuff. I like the technical aspects. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that I find I know I would have a hard time with, actually, if I were to grow a practice, is being disconnected with the work.
Yeah, delegating. And that seems like a... You inhaled?
Yeah.
See, really, you should sit here, because I end up doing most of the talking. So if you sat here, I could see you, so I wouldn't have to look this way.
No, but then I can watch you talk.
I feel like... that the delegating thing or not having as much control over it is a really tough thing for sole practitioners to come over to get over is not the right phrase, but to grow past, or whatever you want to call it.
Especially if you're the one who built it from the ground, and you know that it's something that needs to evolve and constantly grow. If you step out from it, where is that going to go? Like, that's understandable.
I guess you've really got to trust the people you hire, right? Mm-hmm. To like not screw it up.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, it's the offices that grow to be, 150, 200, 400 and multiple locations. Like that's so bizarre, because I think if you are a super passionate designer and you care about the work and all the other things, but about the work, how do you maintain quality control, or if you have a certain style, let's say you adhere to that, how does that even happen over 5 different offices in different locations and different people? What is the identity of the office at that point? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So in a year from now, when you get to 200 people, we'll have you on again and we can ask you these questions.
That's not a goal of mine.
But do you think that it'd be nice to have like 8, 12 people or something like that?
I don't know. I don't think... I've already decided that if I am ever going to grow in that sort of way, I would really need either a business partner or a really, really strong second in command. And so somebody with experience, like there's no way with the things I'm doing that I'm ever going to hire full-time entry-level people or junior people and have the time to manage them well and get enough projects for the both of us and be able to do these other things like the inspection work. I mean, it would be a completely different business from what it is now, which I think a lot of growing businesses do evolve in that way. And I guess that's a weird thing for me to think about, but that it would be people first, where it would be the right business partner before the growth of that type of business.
I could see that, because I was thinking about this question not too long ago, and it makes total sense what you're saying, because when you bring on a junior entry-level person, like there is a lot of hand-holding to begin with, and if you're in the position where you're doing 50 different tasks already, like how does it even work for you to have time to do what you're supposed to do and all the things you mentioned? So yeah, that's very interesting. Well, again, I think we should have you on when you do have that other partner or whatever it is in the future.
Or not.
Or not.
Or just not.
Just not wait for the other partner. Just come back anytime.
Oh, okay. I misread that.
No, I was joking. I was joking about the mean way to take it.
What is she saying? Like, well, it's a little weird.
No, and I understood she meant it the nice way, but then I was... Yeah.
Okay, good.
I meant like we don't need to wait for that partner.
Yeah. We were on the same page, yeah.
I think that's very aggressive to say to our guest. But yeah, thanks for coming out. This was super awesome to hear about all the different things. And so you have XXLA?
XXLA.
Right, and the name of your office?
Sato Architects, Inc.
Right on. Inc.
Nice.
And people can find you on Instagram and whatever else, and the podcast is on iTunes.
Yeah, my Instagram is Audrey Sato Designs or XXLA Podcast. That's probably what it is for Facebook too, but I'm really not really on there.
Google it and people can find it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. It's funny because I've listened to a bunch of other episodes. And so I was like, are we going to be talking about like movies and like Peeps? Or are we going to be talking about like other stuff?
We like to keep our guests on their toes. We try to go, we try to talk about, things particular to the guests, obviously. But we also try and leave it as open as possible.
Yeah, sure.
Like,